So this is part 2 of the notes. We are now on page 25, and what we're going to do here is take a look at these equations of conics that are not in graphing form. Okay, and so they're in these formats here, and so it's not easy to graph them. So what we want to do is we want to manipulate them and move them around so that they can be in the graphing form, like we just did on page 24, that makes it nice and easy to graph. All right, so the way to do this is to complete the square. The first thing you want to do is identify what the conic is first, so then you'll know what process to use for completing the square. So a parabola is very easy to identify because there's only one variable that's squared. And so in this first case, notice that I only have an x squared, I don't have any y squareds. In all the others, I have an x squared and a y squared, and so those are not parabolas. So this first one must be the parabola. Okay? A circle. X squared and y squared have the exact same coefficients. That means same number and same sign. So they're either both positive or both negative and the same number. So 4x squared and 9y squared won't work. 9y squared and negative 25x squared won't work. But here it is, 4x squared and 4y squared. This is going to be the circle. Oops, sorry, down there, number 4. Okay, 4x squared, 4y squared, that's the circle. All right, for the ellipse, x squared and y squared terms have different coefficients, but they still have the same sign, right? The ellipse had both positives, and so here we go, 4x squared, 4y squared, and so that's going to be our ellipse. All right, and then the last one, x squared and y squared for the hyperbola have different signs. All that means is one is positive and the other one is negative. That's how we know it's a hyperbola as soon as we see that negative. And so in this case, this one's 9y squared and a negative 25x squared. So there's our negative. All right, so let's go through the steps to complete the square here. Each one's, oh, sorry, so this is hyperbola. We should write that down. Hyperbola. All right, once you've identified what each shape is, now you can go ahead and complete the square. Parabola is the one that's a little different, okay? Ellipse, circle, and hyperbola are going to have some similarities, but parabola is going to be a little different. So let's go through there and start. Notice that y is the one that's by itself, right? So I'm just going to move that by itself. So I have y equals, and then that would be what? 2x squared minus 4x plus 5. Okay, if you recall the process of completing the square, in this case we're going to group those first two. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is factor out a 2, because before I can complete the square I need a coefficient of 1. And so I'm going to factor out the 2. I'll be left with x squared minus 2x. Now here's where I can complete the square. Remember the process for completing the square is divide by 2, that gives me negative 1, and then square it. It's a two-step process. Divide by 2 and then square. So I divide by 2 and then square, I get plus 1. Now I still have this plus 5 here. It's got to stay in there. But then since I'm now technically I added 1, but really, look here, there was that 2, so it's actually 2 times 1. So I really added 2. I have to do the opposite since I'm working all on the same side of my equation. They have to cancel out in order for this equation to balance. So since I'm all on the same side of the equation, I've added 2, which means I have to do the opposite, which will be subtract 2. And now I haven't changed my equation at all, but it does look a lot nicer because this x squared minus 2x plus 1 factors so nicely as a perfect square trinomial into x minus 1 squared. 5 plus 2 over here gives me a positive 3. And now I am in vertex form, and we love it. Our vertex is positive 1, positive 3. We know that this opens up. It's a little skinny, and we're done. Okay, so you could easily graph that now. All right, let's go on to number 2. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go to circle first. Okay, and then I'll get to ellipse. So we're going to go to number 4 to start with circle. All right, so for circle, again, I'm going to group, in this case, the x squareds, or the x ones, and the y's. So this is now y's here. And then I'm going to move that 29 to the other side. All right, so when I group and group on each of these, again, I'm going to factor out that coefficient. Okay, so that leaves me with that. And now I complete the square. So I would divide by 2, it's negative 3, and square it. Negative 3 squared is a positive 9. Same idea here. Factor out the 4, I'm left with y squared minus 3y. Divide by 2, that's negative 3 halves. When I square that, I get positive 9 fourths. All right, on the right, I have negative 29. But notice over here I added a 9. I didn't really add a 9 though. 4 times 9, I actually added a 36. So if I add it on the left, I have to add it on the right. So I added a 36 on the left, I have to add a 36 on the right. Same thing here. This is really 4 times 9/4, which is 9, so I really have to add that 9 on the right. Now I still have the 4 in front. This becomes x minus 3 quantity squared. This becomes y minus 3/2 quantity squared. When I add all these up, what does that give me? Negative 20 plus this, so 16. Okay. And then I divide everything by 4, just because I want to get rid of those 4s. Gone, gone. And then this one becomes x minus 2 squared, y minus 3/2 equals 4. So now I have a wonderful circle with a center at 2 3/2, a radius of 2. Nice and easy, and we can go ahead and graph it. I'm not going to graph these now. On your homework, you will be completing the square and then graphing, so you'll have to do both. All right, so that's parabola and parabola and circle, probably the easier ones. Let's go to ellipse and hyperbola and see how they're different. Not by much. Still very similar circle. Notice with circle, the difference between that and parabola is I added it to the left and I added it to the right. With parabola, because I was working all on the right-hand side of this equation, I added it here, which means I had to subtract it. So this was that big difference there. Okay? All right, with ellipse, hyperbola, and circle, though, if you add it on the left, you're going to add it on the right. You'll do the same sign. All right, over here, let's group the x's. So I have 4x squared minus 8x, and then I have the 9y squared minus 54y, and again, that negative 49 is going to come to the other side. Factor out the 4, and then complete the square. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Square it, I get a 1. Over here, I factor out the 9. Okay, minus 6y, divide by 2, that's a negative 3 squared, that gives me plus 9. So over here, what should I add? Well, remember, it's not just a 1 that I'm adding 4 times 1. So I add 4, not just a 9, it's 9 times 9, which is 81. Okay, so negative 49 plus 4 plus 81 gives me 36, which I like. Okay, because now, I remember for ellipses, it has to equal 1 on the right. Agreed? So I'm going to do a little trick that I like to do for ellipses and hyperbolas. And it usually works, not always, but it usually works. So what I can usually do is instead of dividing by 36, what if I wrote it like this? 4 times 9, 4 times 9, 4 times 9. Now we know 4 times 9 is 36. So I have 36 divided by 36, and I get a 1. That's what I wanted. Now over here, the reason I do it because it's nice and easy and you see those factors out front cancel out. And so then I have x minus 1 squared over 9 plus y minus 3 squared over 4 equals 1. And I have a nice ellipse. Center would be at 1, 3. In the x direction, I'd go 3. In the y direction, I'd go 4. And I'd have a nice ellipse. That little process doesn't always work. Again, the goal is to get a 1 on the right. So you do whatever you need to do to get a 1 on the right-hand side. So you just divide by whatever's here and then simplify on the left. Okay, last one is the hyperbola. Now, this one has the minus. You just got to be careful with your minus signs. Let's go ahead and group. So I'll start with y since it's positive. This one was already grouped for us. Minus 25x squared plus 200x, and then equals 544. All right, when I group this one, so I'll take out the 9, just like I did before. Let's complete the square. Negative 6y, divide by 2, negative 3, quantity squared, plus 9. Over here, I'm going to keep that negative out front. I'll factor out a negative 25 from both, which means that this is going to change x squared minus 8x, right? Because a negative times a negative would give me that positive. Since I factored out the negative from both of them, I do have to be careful with my signs here. Divide by 2, that's negative 4. Quantity squared is plus 16. So what do I need to add on the right? Well, I have the 544. I need to add 9 times 9 was 81. over here, it's negative 25. Keep the negative with it. Negative 25 times 16. That is negative 400. And so on the right, I do a negative 400 because it is a negative number on the left, so it's a negative number on the right. So this gives me, let me just check, 225. And so now I can rewrite this, y minus 3 squared, keep the negative there, x minus 4 squared, and then I can do my trick again, and luckily this time it also works because 9 times 25 is indeed 225. Gone, 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 gone. I have y minus 3 squared over 25 minus x minus 4 squared over 9, and then that gives me a 1. So this would now be a hyperbola, and remember with this one, center is at 4. X always goes first, then y. 4, 3. And it's going to, in the x direction, go 3. In the y direction, go 5. You grade your box. You do your asymptotes. And then since x is negative, it's going to go in the y direction, vertical, up and down. All right, so homework is page 20 in your practice packet, where you're going to complete the square with these and then graph them. If you have any questions, I will be back at school today at the end of 4th period, and I'll be here the rest of the day, so you can always come see me, or you can ask each other. You can go to the Lit Lab, and you should have up through page 17 already complete. I'll take homework questions tomorrow on anything up through 17, as well as page 20. Reminder that the test is on Thursday and Friday of this week, 2-part test. One day no calculator, one day with a calculator. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a good day.